Yes, I'm here again with my friend Ian, and we're doing the second part of our Robin Hood series by Howard Pyle. We're going to go over the three stories in the first part. Chapter 1, Robin Hood and the Tinker. Chapter 2, The Shooting Match at Nottingham Town. And Chapter 3, Will Stutely rescued by his good companions. And Ian, do you want to give us a summary and then we'll talk about the stories?
Sure thing, sure thing. I'm reading off my phone here. Handy Project Gutenberg version of the of the book, but it works and it's free. So yeah, the first one, Robin Hood and the Tinker. Uh, so it starts out with the sheriff getting pretty irritated at Robin Hood and what his gang has been doing. And there's also a reward from the king that the sheriff really wants to get his hands on, a fair amount of money. So the sheriff decides he's going to hire someone else to catch Robin Hood, and he serves a warrant because his men tell him that nobody in Nottingham Town is going to fight Robin, is going to try and capture Robin because they're all kind of afraid of Robin and they also all really like Robin. So nobody there is going to go after him. And he says, okay, well, then I'm going to send a messenger out to Lincoln Town and see if they can find anybody there who's willing to come and capture Robin Hood. So the messenger goes out with the warrant, and he stops at a place called the Blue Boar Inn, which we will see more of in these next stories. But he stops at the Blue Boar Inn, and he it's a hot day, so he has a beer, and he's sitting outside, and he sees all these guys outside, a tinker, two barefoot friars, and a party of six foresters, all clad in Lincoln green. And they were all drinking ale and singing merry ballads of good times. Um, and he gets to talking with the tinker, who asks him about news, and they're chatting over beers, and the tinker basically is like, I could beat this guy up. I'm Watt. Oh, the Crabstaff, that's his name, Watt. Um, and I can take on anybody. So the messenger's like, great, I found my guy. I didn't even have to go to Lincoln Town. He goes back with Watt to Nottingham, and Watt is a little bit drunk already, and so he's walking around Nottingham singing quite loudly, looking for Robin Hood. And Robin Hood comes up to him, and he says, "Hey, friend, how you doing? What's going on?" And they sort of jest back and forth about drinking. He sort of teases the tinker for being drunk, and the tinker sort of says, "Well, I bet you like drinking too, don't you?" And Robin Hood says, "You know what? You're right. Let's go get a beer." So they go back to the Blue Boar uh, together, and Robin Hood pulls the host of the inn and the bar, the tavern aside, and he says, "Hey, give this guy in his beer mix some Flemish strong water, I think it's called, and which I assume is some sort of
Strong
alcohol.
liquor.
Yeah, some sort of strong liquor, exactly. So Robin Hood gets the tinker drunk super quickly, and the tinker falls asleep, drunk on the table, at which point Robin Hood steals the warrant and runs off with it. Robin Hood pays for their drinks, but then tells the landlord of the inn to also make the tinker pay for the drinks. And so when the tinker sort of comes to later, the landlord says, "Well, didn't you know you were drinking with Robin Hood?" And the tinker's quite angry about that. But the landlord's like, "Hey, I didn't know you didn't know him. Don't beat me up, but you do owe me. You do owe me for all those drinks." And the tinker has no money, so he gives away his bag and his hammer and his coat in payment instead, um, and has to walk out angry and hungover, and heads back into Nottingham Town, where he comes across Robin Hood again, and they fight a little bit, and Robin Hood smacks him in the ribs with his staff, but then the tinker breaks Robin Hood's staff, and Robin Hood's in trouble, and he's going to get beat up, but then he blows his horn, and all his merry men show up, and they rescue him, and sort of his whole crew rolls up behind him, and the tinker is like, "Well, I'm clearly not going to beat off seven guys, however strong I am. It's not going to happen." So Robin Hood says, "Hey, you've been a good guy. Why don't you come join us?" We'll give you the Lincoln green suits and we'll pay you 40 marks and you can hang out with us in the forest and it'll be a fun time. And the tinker basically says, yeah, that sounds great. I'll do that. You're stronger and stouter than I, slyer than I, so I will be thine own true servant. And he goes off with them into the woods and sings ballads for them and does a good job of it until later, I guess, some minstrel shows up, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. So that's the first story. Uh, so the sheriff at that point, the second story, shooting match at Nottingham Town. Sheriff's very upset because the tinker didn't work and the warrant didn't work, and now everybody's laughing at him. So he decides to ride off to visit the king, King Henry, I think it is.
Hmm.
Yeah, King Henry and Queen Eleanor. And I did a little research. It turns out that you have King Richard, who is off fighting the Crusades, is sort of the rightful king of England. His father is King Henry, and Richard's younger brother is Prince John, who
Hmm.
Prince John doesn't show up in the Howard Pyle book at all. I did a little search for it, and he's
Hmm.
not there. So it's an interesting little
Hmm.
thing to mention. But yeah, so here we have King Edward, or I'm sorry, King Henry and Queen Eleanor, and the sheriff rides to see them and he brings all his men. So he shows up in force to the king, and he says, "My lord, this Robin Hood guy is giving me a lot of trouble." And the king says, "Yeah, I've heard of this Robin Hood guy. He sounds his doings have reached even our own royal ears. He is a saucy, rebellious varlet, yet I right mighty soul withal." So even the king's kind of a fan of Robin Hood. But the king's like, but he's breaking the law, and that's not good, and we don't want that. But sheriff, you're my you're the one to enforce my laws in Nottingham. You have all these men that you've arrayed around you to show up here. Why can't you take on this one guy in the woods? This is your job. You should do it. If you don't do your job, um, let's see. Thou art not able to enforce them. Thou art no sheriff for me. So look well to thyself, I say, or ill may befall thee as well as all the thieving knaves in Nottingham. So he basically threatens the sheriff he's going to lose his job if he doesn't do his job. And the sheriff turns away and feels bad. And he's like, geez, I shouldn't have brought all these guys with me. I look real dumb. What am I going to do? Um, and then on the way back, the sheriff's like plotting and scheming, compares him to like a loan shark counting coins and making sure they're all full coins. And he's being very, very picky. And he decides to, comes up with the idea to have a shooting match in Nottingham where the winner gets a golden arrow, um, and fame and renown. And he thinks surely this will lure Robin Hood in because Robin Hood's very good with the bow and arrow, and he's not going to pass an opportunity to sort of show off. So they set all that up, um, and Robin Hood hears about it and says, "Oh, guys, we should go down to Nottingham and we should try and win this arrow. This sounds like a good joke to play on the sheriff." And his friend, one of the merry men, David of Doncaster, says that he has heard from the innkeeper at the Blue Boar, again, same guy. He's heard that this is all a trap for Robin Hood. So Robin Hood's already been, informed of the situation. But Robin Hood says, "No, we're going to go anyway. We're not going to let that guy get the best of us." And so he's trying to trick us. We have to trick him even harder. So they go. He sort of implies that multiple of him and his merry men are going to go, and they all sort of, that's the end of
Hmm.
that scene. They go good and they go off together. The next scene is Nottingham Town on the day of the match. There's a lovely description of the whole layout of the town and how they have it set up, the people that are there, uh, several famed archers in the area, William Leslie, um, one of them, Gilbert of the Red Cap, Adam of the Dell. There's a whole list of possibly previously famous
Hmm.
British archers. I've not heard of anything of them, but that's implied in the story. Anyway, there are two yeomen from Yorkshire. There's a tall stranger in blue from London town, and last was a tattered stranger in scarlet with a patch over one eye. And a little bit later, we find out he has a brown beard, and so it can't be Robin Hood because Robin Hood is blonde. Robin Hood has a blonde beard, and so it can't be Robin Hood because his hair is different, and he's got the eye patch, and everybody knows Robin Hood doesn't have an eye patch. So they have the contest. Everybody shoots really well. But surprise, surprise, the guy with the eye patch and the brown beard does the best. This guy wearing scarlet, and he wins the prize. And the sheriff goes up to him and says, "Good job. What's your name?" And he says, "My name is Jacques O'Tivatdale, and that's where I come from." And the sheriff says, "Well, you are the best archer in the land. Thank you. Will you join my service? Uh, you draw a better bow than even that same coward Robin Hood, who dared not show his face today." So he's sort of baiting Robin Hood. Whether the sheriff suspects this tattered stranger is Robin Hood or not, he's still sort of
Mm,
demeaning Robin Hood to his face.
mm,
But Robin Hood says no, and he says, "No, I won't join you. I'm my own, and no man will be my master." So he
mm,
sort of just roughly brushes off the sheriff's offer, and so the sheriff gets mad at that and says, "Be gone before I have you beaten for your insolence." And the sheriff strolls away, and Robin Hood, surprise, surprise, it's Robin Hood in the disguise. The next scene, we see them gathered in the greenwood together, and the tattered stranger throws off his scarlet rags and takes off his eye patch and says, "Oh, everything comes off easily except this walnut stain on my beard."
mm,
So we find out it's Robin Hood for sure, and they have a laugh. But then Robin Hood pulls Little John aside and says that he's still kind of upset that the sheriff
mm,
called him a coward. And he wants to stick it to the sheriff and tell him, "No, I took your golden arrow, sheriff. I'm the one that has it. You don't get to call me a coward. I was there." So Little John says, "Don't worry about it. Will Stutley and I will send this news to him in a way he does not expect." And so they basically, the sheriff is sitting at the table with his men in his manor house, and they're eating after the big archery contest. And the sheriff is sort of talking to himself, and he's like, "I really thought Robin Hood was going to show up. I didn't think he'd be such a coward. But who was that saucy knave who answered me so bravely? I wondered that I did not have him beaten, but there was something about him that spoke of other things than rags and tatters."
mm,
So we have a sign there. The sheriff sort of knew what was going on, but
mm,
not enough to actually admit it to himself. And just as he's saying that, something comes in through the window and rattles amongst the dishes, and it turns out to be an arrow with a note that basically tells the sheriff that, "Haha, it was Robin Hood you gave the golden arrow to, and too bad for you." And the sheriff is very angry and can't really do anything about it. And that's the end of that story. Third story, we have Will Stutley rescued by his companions. And so the sheriff now has realized that he can't put out a warrant for Robin. He can't trick Robin into getting caught. So he finally decides to do what he should have done all along and be the sheriff and go and arrest the guy that is being a bandit in the woods. As sort of the rightful holder of the law in the realm, that's what he should be doing. So he gets everybody together and he sends them out in groups, and he says, "Go into the greenwood. Uh, take ye each 4 men." So it's groups of 5 out in the woods, and try and hunt them down. If you capture Robin Hood, you get 100 pounds of silver, and if you capture any of his band, you get 2 score pounds of silver. Never mind that the king's reward is in gold.
yeah.
The sheriff gets to keep the king's reward, but his men get a little payout of that. Um, so they go off into the woods, but they can't find anybody because, again, they've all been warned by the innkeeper at the Blue Boar. He says, "Hey, watch out. Sheriff and his men are coming." So they hide in the woods. And Robin Hood says, "I don't want to kill anybody. I've killed that one man," which we read about in sort of the prologue in the last episode. Um, but I don't want to grieve any widows. I don't want to, cause any problems. I don't want to cause anybody to lose their lives. But if we have to defend ourselves, then kill anybody you have to.
Mm,
And the men are like, "Oh, they're going to think we're cowards, but
mm,
we're still going to do what he says." So they hide, and the sheriff's men have no luck finding them at all. And at the end of the day, um, Robin Hood is like, "All right, we got to make sure where they're at, who wants to go spy them out and find out what's going on." So Will Stutley jumps up and offers to spy on them. And Robin Hood's like, "Great, go for it, Will." Will throws on a friar's gown, but he keeps on his green underneath, and he has a sword kind of hidden underneath his robes as well. And he goes back to the Blue Boar and tries to get information from the innkeeper there. But the Blue Boar is full of the sheriff's men who are drinking and singing and being loud. And so Will Stutley kind of goes and sits in the corner in the friar's robe and sits quietly, just sort of like he's praying or meditating. But the landlord doesn't recognize him, the innkeeper, and so doesn't come up to him to talk to him. And so he's just sort of sitting there nervously trying to get the guy's attention, maybe. And a cat comes by and rubs against his knee, which raises his robe just a little bit and sort of shows off the green that he's wearing underneath. And unfortunately, one of the sheriff's men catches this and sort of deduces, oh, this guy is up to no good. That's probably one of Robin Hood's guys. He's not a priest because he's wearing green. And if he was honestly, one of the foresters that are supposed to be wearing green, he wouldn't be hiding under a priest garb. So this has got to be one of Robin Hood's guys. And so they confront him, and Will can't really trick them into thinking he's a friar, and so they attack him. He fights back, but there's too many. He gets overwhelmed, gets knocked on the head, and thrown in prison. And the I think it's the daughter of the innkeeper runs out to Robin Hood and tells him what's happened to Will, and she's crying and she's upset, and he's going to get hanged tomorrow. So they have to go rescue him. So Robin Hood summons all the merry band, and they go down. They plan to go down to Nottingham and rescue his friend, Will Stuteley, from the sheriff's clutches. Um, and so they sort of hide in the forest and in and around Nottingham until the sun is high in the sky, and the sheriff begins. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I skipped a part here. So then David of Doncaster goes into Nottingham to find out what's happening. And he meets a pilgrim, a palmer, I think it's called. Yeah, the palmer, which I'm not sure what that means, but they got a picture of him. He's dressed, he's got a little cross hanging by his side. He's got a bag and a staff. So looks like somebody that just sort of wanders around and says prayers for people, perhaps.
I think
But
he goes to the Holy Land. Sorry for the interruption, but he
oh,
goes to the Holy Land and like comes back with a palm, kind of, some kind
oh,
of sign of, I don't know, penance or yeah, faith. So,
oh, cool. I didn't know that. That's
mm.
neat. Yeah, so definitely a pilgrim then if he's going to the Holy Land. Um, and so David Doncaster is asking this pilgrim, hey, what's going on here? I heard that Will Stuteley's going to hang. I would not miss the sight, for I have come from afar to see so sturdy a rogue hanged. And the pilgrim says, don't talk about him like that. He's a nice guy, basically. And alas, Robin Hood and his band may be outlaws, but he takes only from the rich, the strong, and the dishonest. And there is not a poor widow or peasant with many children from here to Sherwood, but who has barley flour all year long, thanks to him. It grieves my heart to see someone as gallant as Stuteley die. Um, and so then David, understanding that this guy's kind of on their side, sort of gives him a little wink and says, perchance Robin Hood is not so far away, but that there will be stout doings this day. Um, and he kind of gets the hint that Robin Hood is maybe going to rescue this guy. So then David of Doncaster goes back, tells Robin Hood what the plan is. The whole crew roll up to Nottingham, and as the sun is setting, the sun is low in the western sky.
Mm.
The sheriff brings Will Stuteley out to be hanged at the crossroads where three roads meet. Um, and they're bringing him out, I imagine, on some sort of a cart. I think it says his hands are tied. He's probably tied to a post, and they're taking him out to be hanged at the crossroads.
Mm.
And Will Stuteley, all the way there, is like, "Don't hang me. Give me a sword, and I will fight you, and you can kill me while I'm fighting." And the sheriff says, "No, we're not going to give you a sword." And he says, "Well, then let me fight you with my hands." Even then, and the sheriff says, "No. And if now that you've bothered me so much, I'm also going to quarter you limb from limb after you are hanged." Uh, which I think in the Christian days that sort of makes your resurrection by the body a little harder. I
Oh,
think I
really?
think that was
Oh,
sort of the sort of you know part of the because, like, who cares if they're going to chop your corpse up? But if you're planning to come back and be resurrected in the body at some point, if your body's chopped up, that makes that a lot harder or impossible.
mm.
I think that's hence the threat against the corpse.
Mm.
Um, and so they're dragging him out to the gallows when yeah, there's this lovely thing of Stuteley sort of gazing at the fair country of Nottingham and Sherwood and seeing the bright air, and it's filling his heart, and he's crying how beautiful everything is. So we're all feeling really bad for Will Stuteley, and then he looks around, he realizes that the merry men are around, and then he sees Robin Hood And yet betwixt all of these men come to rescue him, there's a line of men at arms of the sheriff, and so
Mm.
he's still nervous. But then Little John shows up, sort of knocks the man at arms aside, cuts Will loose, steals the sheriff's sword, hands it to Will. They fight off the men, and they're sort of fighting a little bit, but Robin Hood and his men get the best of the sheriff and the men at arms very quickly, and they rescue Will, and they beat them back so badly that the sheriff and his men retreat. And Will Stuteley yells after them, "Oh, stay! You'll never catch bold Robin Hood if you do not stand to meet him face to face." But the sheriff, bowing along his horse's back, made no answer, but only
Yeah.
spurred the faster. So we have the sheriff chickening out and running away, proving not to be able to stand by the might that he wanted to bring against the outlaw. And Robin Hood rescues Will Stuteley, and Will Stuteley and Little John cry. They weep to be back together. They're very happy that they rescued him, and they go back to the woods. And we're gone as a storm cloud moves away from the spot where a tempest has swept the land. They left 10 of the sheriff's men lying along the ground wounded, some more, some less, yet no one knew who had smote them down. Um, and thus the Sheriff of Nottingham tried thrice to take Robin Hood and failed each time. And the last time he was frightened, for he felt how near he had come to losing his life. So he said, "These men fear neither God nor man, nor the king, nor the king's officers. I would sooner lose mine office than my life, so I will trouble them no more." And he kept close within his castle for many a day, dared not show his face outside of his own household. And all the time he was gloomy and would speak to no one, for he was ashamed of what had happened that day.
Yeah,
So
that's a
all
good. Mm.
I was just gonna say,
Um,
so all three of these stories are sort of the shaming of the sheriff.
yeah. Yeah, that last passage was a good punctuation on just him, puffing his chest, wanting to get the glory, the revenge for his kinsmen, the forester that Robin Hood had killed in his origin story, reason why he went out to the woods, going to the king with all his newly sort of armored troop of men, and now, yeah, he slunk back to his house wordlessly, staying in it several days, ashamed to show his face, just utterly despondent.
Yep. Such to all illegitimate rulers.
Yeah, right. If
Yeah.
only.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So did you?
mm.
Yeah, sure thing, man. Sure thing. I
Yeah,
was
that
gonna
was
say,
a
did
great summary. Did you
thanks.
just look at you said you took some notes, or were you also, is very fluid. I,
I mean, I just read them. I read them sort of prepping for. We tried to do this last week, and I had some stuff that pulled me away. So I had already read through them, a few weeks ago, so they were kind of in my mind. But then I just sort of skimmed through them again this morning, and I do have some notes as well that I had taken before and sort of filled out more today. So lots to be said. And I think because I had just read them all again this morning, it was very easy to sort of like hit the main points.
yeah. Yeah, that was I might try that just sort of like after reading later on a skimming to sort of, because I feel like in my summary, sometimes I get bogged down in the details, and and you did a good job also of kind of focusing in on some poignant or powerful scenes or interesting language or something, and I want to be able to do that too, but I feel like sometimes I get too bogged down. So yeah,
Mm,
that was good.
thanks. It's the secret is paying attention to the sensation in the body. Like when I'm feeling excited, I'm like, okay, this part like needs
Okay,
to. So take that for what it's worth. But
thank you. Yeah,
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 yeah.
that's good. I'll try to do that. Yeah, so what stands out to you about these three stories, about the individual stories?
I mean, I kind of alluded to this already, but as a whole, I think we have a very clear portrait of the sheriff as sort of the local authority, and the one who is. I mean, we talked about this in the last episode, but Robin Hood as a trickster figure, Robin Hood as somebody who is trying to correct a society where the one who is ruling, the one who has authority over the society, is not performing their duties correctly. They're
Mhm.
not taking care of the ones that are put in their charge, and they're
Yeah.
just getting rich. They're just, taking care of their own interests at the expense of the people. And so he comes through. Traditionally, in that's kind of a society, you would have a trickster figure come through and like knock, you've got the jester who would mock the king or something like that. There's something that sort of brings the authority back down to earth and reminds
Mm,
them that they're human. Um, and what we have here is we have Robin Hood coming in as somebody who balances the situation. So
mm,
the problem in the society is becoming unhealthy because all the power is rising to the top, and the
mm,
top isn't taking care of the bottom. A healthy society, you have
mm,
that flow happening, so everybody's getting taken care of, and then that can
mm,
kind of grow
mm,
if it's done well. And so what Robin Hood is doing is he's manually going in and taking the money from the rich and distributing it amongst the poor so he's not trying to replace the broken social order. He's trying to maintain the society until the rightful authority somebody comes in and takes the rightful place. Um, which is, I think we talked about that last episode, so I won't go into it too much.
mm.
But we see here a very nice portrait of the sheriff as the corrupt authority. He knows what he's supposed to be doing. The first thing he does is he wants the reward from the king, and
Yeah,
so he pays somebody else significantly less money to do the work for him, so he can get the reward without having to do any of the work.
yeah.
And he calls that law. That's him trying to do it legally. In the end, where they're talking about, it was like, oh, I failed by law, I failed by guile, and so I'm going to try might. It's like
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
that's so. I just think that points to the failure of him as an authority figure. And then he tries trickery because again, he doesn't want to risk, he doesn't want to use any force. It could be argued that the trickery is like a respectful thing. Like if he wasn't painted as the villain, you could see, oh, well, I'm trying to trick this guy so I don't have to risk my men's lives. We're not going to go all out war against him. We're going to try and do it sneakily at first. But there is this element of cowardice to it, I think, because
Yeah.
he is painted as the villain.
Yeah.
And then in the third case, he he tries to use might, but he just sends his men out. He's like, okay, everybody go out in the woods. I'm going to stay at home. You go capture him and bring him back for me. So again, he's not leading the charge. He's not taking over his authority. Um,
Yeah.
and he fails every time. So yeah, I don't know. What did you think? Should
Yeah,
we
with
do
that
sort of
general
overarching?
Yeah, with that general arc, yeah, I agree. I didn't notice that. Yeah, so when he sends out the warrant for the arrest, he says that's using like that's by law that he's trying to catch the knave, Robin Hood. And so yeah, perhaps he views law as something that is in his power to use rather than in as something that is supposed to guide his actions, of which he is an agent, And there's some overlap there, but there's maybe a subtle but a very powerful difference in how a good leader versus a bad leader might think of the law.
Yeah, I
Something.
like that the law as something to take advantage of, as opposed to the law as something that we all follow with the idea that it will take care of us, with
Mm.
that sort of social contract, placing the law higher. I mean, it's a very American, it's a very American thing. That was what um, the founding fathers were all about. Is we're going to have the document, and the document, the rules of the land will be the thing that we follow, as opposed to a king, as opposed to an illegitimate authority. So
Yeah,
it's kind of
yeah,
echoes of that here. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, this sort yeah, sovereignty isn't in a human being, it's in some way. That seems like that goes back to even the ancient Israelites with I mean, and it could be interesting to kind of look at that historically as like it's something they really wrestle with, where there's the prophet as the voice of the divine, but there's also they kind of want this political king. And even before that, there's Moses with his tablets, and the first time that they view like some kind of law code, it gets broken because they're sort of following some sort of group erotic passion for the idol god, which is uh a sort of throwback to like the pre-axial period of sort of naturalistic kind of gods and animal gods and things like that, even before the anthropomorphic gods. But
Yeah. 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 The idea of law as something to um, turn to. um, as opposed to, I mean, the sheriff using the law to just make a bunch of money. Like, oh, I'm going to serve this warrant and pay this guy, 80 gold pieces when I'm getting 200 gold pieces if I turn in Robin Hood. Like that feels very pagan, idol, sort of
Mm,
worship of nature, worship of like might makes right, as
mm,
opposed to no, we have these codes and structures, and if we follow them, they will support us, or we will find ways to refine them so they
mm,
support us better. But
mm,
they have
mm.
to be held higher than our own needs.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah,
otherwise they're not a law. They're just a tool for getting our needs met.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, there's some that way is also sort of like nepotism, corruption. Like it's understood that, I don't know, in a corrupt society, I would think it's kind of understood that the people who are officials are always going to get a piece. So if I'm the king, I might offer a certain amount reward for this outlaw, but know that it's going to filter down through the ranks and like everybody's going to take a chunk or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, because the sheriff's interest is, especially in the first case with the tinker, he wants the reward. He doesn't want to stop Robin Hood because Robin Hood's breaking the law. He doesn't want to stop Robin Hood because he's, ostensibly, if this was a healthy society and Robin Hood was the villain, was the bandit, like the bandit is taking money from the society for his own benefit. So the law
Yeah.
is meant to stop him, and you should want to stop him because he's damaging the society. But
Yeah.
when the ruler is the one stealing the money for his own benefit, then the outlaw becomes the hero, and he's the one that's standing up for the society and trying to make sure it works the way it's supposed to. So
Yeah.
it's very flipped there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the law, yeah. Yeah, people should be serving the society and the law is sort of some codification of that. And the law and justice and the law do have some resemblance to sort of more, you could say, like primitive law. I think one aspect of primitive societies and sort of primitive law is the reciprocal nature. So eye for an eye, or like
Mm.
Hammurabi's code. It's uh, you're negligent in some way and it kills your neighbor's son. The law says your son will now be killed. It makes sense.
I actually
That's
I heard, so I don't know the historical legitimacy of this.
oh, okay. Yeah.
But I heard tell that what the and I don't want to push back on you, but it's such a
No,
fun
no,
story.
no.
It's such a
Please.
fun way to
Yeah.
look at it. I've
Yeah.
heard tell that the Hammurabi's code would be better translated as no more than an eye for an eye.
Okay. Okay.
And
So it's
so
restraining maybe the. Mm,
which raises it to like a pretty high level of intelligence of like
hmm
the law is, if your negligence killed his son, the worst thing you can do is kill his son. You can't burn down his house, you can't kill his wife. Like
mm,
you have to rein in your passions and be
mm,
logical enough to compare the damage that was done to you versus the damage you want to do to the other. Like
mm.
that's a step up from I'm angry, I'm just gonna attack,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Mm.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I love the idea of the of humans in history being a lot smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, you're right. I probably, I mean, and we often do this in history. We paint a cartoonish version and then yeah, try to yeah, that does seem smarter in that, I mean, given the constraints of the time of the ruling passions and whatever tradition and culture that code might have had to contend with knowingly, they couldn't necessarily make yeah, so that does bring some rationality, some reflection, some room for debate, some and some yeah, like you're saying, restraint of the passions. Maybe yeah,
Mhm.
and that
I,
that is what in general law and leadership should be doing. It should be kind of restraining, bringing the temperature down, bringing some rationality into people's natural tendency to go with their passions and self-interest. Oh,
mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, because it creates a healthier society, and then therefore, if you look at Hammurabi's code, the way I'm suggesting we might be able to look at it, you see that as like, oh, the law is a higher thing that we can turn to and organize our lives around
Yeah.
for a better outcome in the future
Yeah.
because it stops bloodshed, it stops feuds, it stops, uh, warfare mounting higher and higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
Um, Clearly, it didn't work that well. I mean, we're still dealing with that these days, but maybe we could do with a little bit of that ourselves, you know. Yeah, but the idea of law as something that is provided by a higher power of some sort, or stands on a level above our everyday life, is I think something we've kind of lost these days. That now it becomes very much a question of like legalistically getting the words right and trying to find ways to cover, like trying to break the law if you can. And that's not of course you can break the law. It's written out of words. You're never going to write a law that's unbreakable. The point of the law is not to be unbroken. The point of the law is that this is a social contract that we all agree is important, and this is how we sustain ourselves as a community through time, for the flourishing and betterment of all. That's what the law should be. But,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, you cannot, it's literally impossible, supposedly, and I think it is, to delineate every single instance. I've heard that's one flaw of the modern Indian Constitution, as opposed
mm,
to the American Constitution, that's sort of more general, flexible, adaptable, can be changed to some degree. Uh, but yeah, I mean, the idea, yeah, not everything can be delineated by the letter of the law, but you can never dispense with the spirit of the law being in, what can you say, in the hearts of almost everybody in society. Definitely, you want them to be in the rulers and, yeah, to restrain them too.
yeah, yeah, and just being honest about the fact that we're humans and we're going to make mistakes, and there are ways that we would want others to pay for mistakes against ourselves, and so we should pay for our mistakes against others, and uh, it 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 creates a healthier sense of community if the laws are in the hearts as opposed to uh, solely in the books to be analyzed and probed and broken.
Yeah. And I think we've talked some about that second thing of using, intelligent people, especially using law, using rationality, argumentation, like, the Pharisees supposedly in the Bible, or the Sophists,
Mm,
with, Socrates, where with Jesus or Socrates, you have this person who knows the law really well, but knows the spirit of the law and lives and loves the spirit of the law and can transmit that to the people and sort of sometimes be ridiculous. And in both those cases, they were killed, um, for breaking the law. Which maybe I
mm.
don't know if we can even draw this parallel to Robin Hood, but
Wow, yeah.
but I was sort of thinking, yeah, the you always have to have the spirit of the law, and don't you think it's such corruption of society when a lot of the highest IQ members who have had leisure and education of like the laws, rhetoric, whatever you want to say, the Bible, are sort of like using that, I would say cynically, to sort of better the position of themselves or their group as opposed to like the whole society?
Yeah, I definitely think that's the sign of a sick society. Um, and you know, the the ideal result is some sort of a collapse that reminds people of what's important. Ideally a smaller collapse, ideally some sort of, oh yes, no, we do care about this stuff, and it's the spirit of the law is important. Like we have to maintain that, for the sake of sort of having that cultural through line that keeps us all alive and well. But when things get comfortable for long enough, people forget
Mm.
that it's not guaranteed that things are going to be this comfortable. And they're like, oh, it's always going to be this way. And I don't have to do anything to feed the system that is supporting me. I can just
Yeah,
keep taking from it. And I
yeah,
mean, you see that pattern everywhere from, you're talking like politicians and lawyers or whatever, to, sort of Western civilization and what we're doing to the planet ecologically.
Mm,
And that, isn't just the West, but it's sort of the global society now. Just take,
mm,
take, take for whatever I need, whatever I want, and not do anything to realize that the system I am taking from also needs to be supported. So
yeah.
you have CEOs making a bunch of money while their workers are on welfare. Like,
Mm,
you want your workers to be happy. That guarantees that they work harder, they know what they're doing, they have incentives to grow your business because they know they'll be taken care of.
mm.
Um, your employees are happier, so people come to your business more than they go to other businesses. Like, it just creates this flourishing when you take care of the things below you that you don't necessarily have to take care of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Right. That's right.
people forget that, and then they get comfortable, and then they don't, and then it's like a mountain, right? So like, if the top of the mountain's not taking care of the bottom of the mountain, the bottom of the mountain starts to crumble. Top of the mountain doesn't get to just float in the air. I don't care what the eye on the dollar bill, the floating eye on the pyramid, I don't care what it says. Like, it's going to collapse if you don't take care of the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah. They can't fly to New Zealand to their bunkers necessarily.
Nope.
Yeah. 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 And you might argue that this is part of the system of incentive to have the CEO making, I'm sorry, I don't know the statistic, but 500 times, or maybe even it's way more than that, like than the average
I
worker. But, but then I thought, there's some statistic, and again, I'm a little vague on this, but Japan during the 1980s, I think it was for quite a long time, their CEO made something like four times the amount. Let's say it's 10 times the amount of the regular worker. And of course they get perks too, a driver and whatever. But still, I mean, they were extremely successful companies that are still with us to this day. And so I don't think that's it seems like it's a culture, it's an ethos, and yeah, I think there's big things to be said for that, to changing the culture.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
agree.
just in terms of politics, it's just a bad look, and it will inspire a lot of dark emotions, envy and things when you just thinking about your self-interest if you're a billionaire or something. Uh, yeah, that level of inequality, it starts to get a little, you want to at least like go through the motions of giving away a lot of money. Um, I don't know if you saw this, but back like when we were kids, that who Ted Turner was. He probably still alive or something, um,
Couldn't tell you, but yeah, I know, yeah, I know who he is.
but yeah, he was a billionaire. I think he had $10 billion or something, and he gave away $1 billion. And he had a press. This was such a big deal and everything, but he had a press conference where he said, "I have 10. I gave away 10% of my wealth. Like, not a big deal." And I really like that. I mean, I know he married Jaden Fonda, and he's kind of, maybe he thrives on kind of iconoclasm, or being maybe playing a little bit of the trickster figure. But I mean, he really did give away a lot of money, and um, yeah, I do think yeah, there's something to be said for just, yeah, I think you're painting a picture of a society that needs to be in balance. There's kind of a pyramid. You don't want it to be too top heavy, or else it will topple in some way. And I think there's something to that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I don't know. Let's go back to let's go back
Yeah,
to our tinkerer.
yeah.
I'm sure we'll spiral out to interesting directions again.
Yeah.
But one thing, although I'll take it a different direction this time. One thing I did want to mention in the tinkerer episode, that particular chapter felt like an anime to me. It's just like
Well,
like
yeah,
there's
he
this
has the
big
bat.
dude.
Yeah,
He's got the sword, and he's just
yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna win. And then the hero comes, he's like, oh, and they fight, and then like the end, they're friends, and he joins the group, and it just feels like a
That's funny.
standalone anime episode. And then I'm thinking like in everything I've ever heard about Robin Hood, Watt of the Crab Staff, I've never heard of this guy. So he's sort of this like one-off like filler episode where like we get to see Robin Hood be a hero, and then I'm curious to see if he comes up in the Howard Pyle book ever again. Like
Mm.
Little John has shown up a bunch of times, so he's obviously a
Hmm.
main character. But this guy gets a whole chapter, and then all we hear is that he sings songs for them, but he gets replaced later by this famous minstrel. So like he doesn't even get to be the singer guy. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that would be, yeah, I don't know if he appears later, it'd be good to see, but he doesn't seem like a main character like John. But are there any other main characters in Robin Hood's band? But maybe we can only, there's a certain limited kind of number of characters that the human mind probably can kind of keep track of, right? There's like all these other people that you vaguely know, and then there's people that are sort of like real characters in your mind, kind of like real people, where you're seeing different aspects in different times. I know later in the story, it'd be interesting to get to this. Little John joins the Sheriff of Nottingham's band.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and for the same pay too. Like I don't know if there's something to be drawn from that, but I believe he's given 3 suits of whatever Lincoln Green or whatever the Sheriff of Nottingham's men and 40 marks and all the feasting he can do, whatever, all the
Wow. Yeah, what a mirroring. That's crazy. Yeah, we'll have to get to that one. That's
Mm.
neat.
But
I'll
yeah,
be
this
fun
this
looking.
was yeah, the Tinker is, I can see the anime character comparison because he is, like, it describes how he has his bag and his hammer, his crab staff that's very thick, thicker than a man's arm or something like that. And yeah, he's very boastful. He's already getting drunk when and he's bragging about carrying around the warrant with the seal in his bag, and yeah, he's kind of a fun, foolish character.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking now like it would have been fun if in the third scene, the third story where we have Will Stutley getting captured by the sheriff, it'd be really funny if it was the Crabstaff guy that was like, "Oh, let me do it. I know the sheriff. I can go trick him." And he goes and he gets captured and like that would be but they might recognize him. I don't know. But I like that mirroring of like of him sort of being won over by Robin Hood and then being captured by the sheriff and rescued by Robin Hood again. It sort of gives his character, it would give his character like an interesting flavor, but
Hmm.
I did not write it, so
Yeah. But what is interesting to you about that? Like he would try to be the hero. He was trying to be the hero sort of before, right? To serve the warrant, right? He's trying to be at the vanguard. And then later he it would be funny for him to again be at the vanguard and again have a pratfall.
um let's see. Yeah, I mean it's the like
He's like a pick me.
I'm thinking of it sort of like he's paying his dues, right? So he's like he's going against Robin Hood and trying to serve the warrant, and then Robin Hood sort of beats him and wins him over,
Mm,
but I could see it being um I'm like he's you're not quite sure if you can trust him. Like, oh, he was trying to arrest Robin Hood. Maybe this is all a trick that he's just trying to sneak in and like bonk Robin Hood over the head when he's sleeping and like take him to the sheriff at that point. Like maybe he's trying
mm,
to be tricky. He's not really on our side. Everybody's suspicious of him.
mm,
And then but he's like, no, I'm gonna go get the information from the sheriff. And there's a
mm,
little bit of a dramatic tension of like, is he or is he going to the sheriff to report where Robin Hood is? Was he
mm,
behind the scenes the whole time? And then we find out, no, he is genuinely on Robin Hood's side. He's going to be hung. He's offering to fight the sheriff. And they're like, okay, he's a good man. We're going to go rescue him. Like it would
yeah.
be sort of a cleansing for his character of suspicion.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah, that's good. You could even, depending on how much detail you wanted the story to go into, you could have him, let's say when he tries to to rescue Will Stutley, he may be captured. He may have like a night of reckoning where the 5% of him that still doesn't like Robin Hood or something, or still isn't completely with them, he goes through some kind of reckoning. He could have some kind of interaction with someone else in the jail about that, or something like that. He sees something of how corrupt the sheriff is, or something that kind of changes him. And yeah,
That's a good idea. Yeah. See, we can do a better job with this. Sorry, Howard Pyle.
It'd be funny if we maybe we could ever, I don't know, that might be fun. I never would see myself writing these kinds of things before, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. And maybe even in animation.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to point out like there is a parallel between him and Little John,
Hmm.
where in Howard Pyle's book, he's the second character, I think, to join Robin Hood's band after fighting Robin Hood and sort of beating Robin Hood, but not completely beating Robin Hood, where Robin Hood can't fight anymore because his quarterstaff is broken. What do you think of that?
I had not noticed that. That is interesting. Yeah, it is. It is very very similar. He's a bigger man than Robin Hood. He's better with the staff, or at least is, he breaks Robin Hood's staff. Little John knocked Robin Hood off the bridge. So they're both kind of higher up. And yeah, I don't know. I hadn't really even noticed I think because we read them, in separate sections, I hadn't even made the comparison. But
Mm,
yeah, it is pretty clear. It's almost like
it's a big parallel, right?
yeah, it's like the same process happening twice in a row.
Yeah.
Um, and what do we see? We see Little John in the first one is just somebody walking through the woods. And they get in a fight over like who's going to cross the bridge. So it's just kind of a like,
Although it's
no,
a Brit.
I'm the guy. No, I'm the
Yeah.
guy. And
Yeah.
it's,
It is over
whereas
water though. There's a border area there. Although both Little John and the Tinker are from another town, and they
oh
both
yeah,
have
yeah,
bragged about identified themselves as like I'm this where I come from, I'm this guy. Although that's kind of normally I think what guys would do, but
yeah, especially in these kind of like hero stories.
yeah, yeah, cowboy type
But
stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. I don't know if I have anything else to say about that because I hadn't really thought of it before, but it is interesting, and you have him sort of. I love the trickery with Watt, like the like, oh, come and get a drink with me, like so,
Yeah, there's a
I
lot of good
mean,
dialogue there.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't know if I have anything else. I can check my notes.
Mm.
Anything else to say on that particular episode? Um, just that the Tinkerer seems he seems very like they say that um I'm going to be rough with the numbers here, but something like 70% of the people in a society just kind of go whichever way the wind is blowing,
Hmm.
and roughly 15% are trying to move in the good direction, and another 15% are just being selfish, roughly like that.
Hmm.
And you see this guy Watt as like he really doesn't care. He's there,
Yeah,
he's drinking with his friends, he's having a good time, he's singing songs. He's like, "Oh, you're gonna pay me a bunch of money to beat somebody up? I'm good at beating people up. Like, look at me, look what I can do. Yeah,
yeah,
I'll find this guy. He can't be that big of a deal."
yeah.
And then when he's beaten, he's like, "Oh, well, okay, I guess I'm with you guys now." And he just sort of sways with wherever the sort of power source is in the moment. Um, so it could be a symbolic kind of example of Robin Hood sort of winning over the common man who isn't invested in either way. He's not, Robin hasn't given him money the way he has like the orphans and whatever else it was that I was reading earlier, the
Mm.
women without husbands and whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, this guy's
and
kind of middle class, kind of skilled artisan. Like he's not one of those.
exactly, exactly. So he has no dog in the fight as far as like he's not super rich, so he's not getting robbed, and he's not super poor, so he's not getting the charity from Robin Hood's, good deeds. So just sort of a middle ground kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and that brings into the class, I think is I keep focusing on this story as like class in terms of leadership, but also just more gradients in between the top and the bottom. And I thought, this story was a little bit of like an illustration. So I pay attention to Robin Hood not just as the sort of the leader who steps in or the trickster figure, some type of leading character who steps in when the legitimate leader is not present, but also just as leader in general, some type of leadership person. And I feel like, yeah, like with both the Tinker and Little John, Robin Hood shows himself to be very, very brave, capable, not only with his fighting, but even with his words and with his trickery. And he tries to do it's almost as if he tries to do everything he can to not fight the Tinker, to vanquish him without even fighting, much less bloodshed. But finally it gets to that, and then it's almost like the Tinker is able to beat him, so the Tinker does not have to feel like Robin Hood is superior in every way. So to me there's almost like a politicking going on where the leader does not want to inspire, you want to inspire awe is maybe too much, but sometimes anyway, but at least real respect and fear. A little fear is a part of that. So Robin Hood is very, very capable, but yeah, people still have a feeling of their own bravery, power, agency with Robin Hood because it's like they beat his ass too. So like he's not like this godlike figure.
Yeah, yeah. It humanizes him. Yeah, that's so good. That's such a good point about leadership as like not being, not having there be no fear of him being like, yes, I am competent, I am strong, I'm capable of, I'm smart, I'm capable of being a leader, but I am not twice better than you. I can't beat you at everything. You have your own authority, you have your own power, you have your own like energy that you can bring that I
Yeah,
need. And
yeah,
it creates a like a positive echo chamber of people supporting each other as opposed to just like either cowering them through fear,
yeah, yeah,
buying them just with money,
yeah,
or being kind of godlike
yeah,
and then they lose their initiative, you know.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of even the weapons they use, this is especially salient in the prologue where he fights Little John, where he's not going to use the bow and arrow, which is sort of like the middle class, like yeoman, small, someone who has a little bit of land, a little bit of wealth, and therefore time to like practice archery 20 hours a week or however. I think it was even more than that sometimes. They found even in the archaeologists have found their bones are different from all the archery that they practiced. Yeah. And these were very, it takes a lot of power to pull these bows and everything that have real force. And so, yeah, but yeah, he puts down his bow. He will meet John where he's at and kind of show that he's one of the people kind of thing. He's not going to take advantage. He's not going to shoot from afar and everything.
That's neat. Yeah. And but that's I hadn't thought of that either, but that's a very good example of leadership on his part. Yeah. Yeah,
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 and he
yeah.
does the same. He fights the tinker with a quarterstaff too.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 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 And even when he's fighting the Tinker, like the first win that he gets, like he hits him in the ribs. Like he doesn't go for like, trying to knock him out right away. He's trying to
Hmm.
be like, oh, I got you. I hit you in the ribs. Like, how you feeling? You still want to keep doing this? Like, there's a playfulness there, or an openness to not like just completely overpower him right away.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. I remember you mentioning that in the summary, and I hadn't remembered that. Yeah, he kind of meets the tinker where he's at. He talks smack with him a little bit. They go drink together. He kind of gives him the Flemish strong waters. That's also a place to show where he has cultivated relationships in the community and kind of the story says that the reason that what the proprietor's name, I forgot his name, but of the sign of the Blue Boar, the drinking establishment, uh like Robin Hood and his men have hung out there drinking, but they have always conducted themselves well. It's not like they're getting rowdy and destroying the place, even though they could.
Mhm.
And they always pay their bill on time. It
Mhm.
says something like their names are never put on the back of the door. So it's like they never run a tap. I forgot
Right.
how they put it, but
I think that's what it was, behind the door or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
yeah, he's and it says also the proprietor, speaking of people who are kind of like not really particularly virtuous or vicious. They're just sort of they're going with their self-interest. It says the proprietor knows what side of the bread his knows what side his bread is buttered on. Like, and
Hmm.
so that's why he helps Robin Hood.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he again is not, yeah, he's not forcing anything. He's kind of he inspires love amongst the sort of peasantry and the widows and everything. And with the other people, he's kind of he's playing it smart.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 Hmm. So, maybe we move on to the second story.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds good.
Did you have well, it's just natural flow. Did you have anything? I mean, this is a famous this was in the Disney movie. You know, the
Really?
Robin Hood dresses up and goes to the archery contest. Like this
Oh,
is I think he's dressed up like a stork in the Disney movie, if I remember correctly. But it's definitely one of the core Robin Hood, you know, episodes.
I didn't know that. I haven't seen the Disney movie as far as I can remember. Is that the one where he's a fox?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
as befitting. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. It holds up. I think it holds up. It's got some great songs. Granted, I watched it when I was a kid, so I have all the nostalgia, built in there, but I still like it.
I gotta check that out. Yeah, I like that. I feel you mentioned that this is a ruse, and in a way that would be a legitimate tactic by a ruler to catch a villain, and I completely agree. But then yeah, we and you said it kind of since he's painted as the villain, you could sort of have the shadow of that hanging over this. Um, yeah. I mean, we could look at it as still, yeah, the sheriff is, as you mentioned at the end of the story, he sort of can maybe subconsciously suspect Robin Hood. He kind of questions the winner of the shooting match who has the patch over his eyes in Robin Hood disguise and is sort of questioning him and sort of doesn't like his response to his inquiry and tells him be off with you, essentially. And then later, yeah, he's sort of wondering to himself like who was that guy, something.
Yeah. Yeah. It shows a little bit of, I think, like it shows like if you compare the two, like Robin Hood seems very aware of the sheriff and what's going on and everything. And the sheriff seems sort of half aware. Like you tell, oh, he picked up something strange about the guy, but if, suppose, if he were a legitimate authority, if he were sort of in his power in the right way, the story would be, oh, he's also able to sense, and maybe they would have like a if we did have sort of an authority figure against Robin Hood, and they were both sort of good guys, decent human beings, but on the wrong side, on the wrong side of the law, then you'd
Mm.
have this sort of like weighing and balancing of each other, like, oh, I know you're
Yeah.
Robin Hood, but I can't call you out for whatever reason, and there'd be this like kind of tension in the story there, but we don't see that, and it again shows the sheriff as sort of the weaker man, just lacking in personal ability, despite his position of authority.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I'm thinking of seeing and being seen. It seems like the sheriff in this scene and I mean, in this story and others is all about the look that he thinks he's giving off to everyone else. When his armorers spend days like making and perfecting the armor of his men before he goes out to London town to meet with King Henry.
Henry, yeah.
Uh, and in this story, as you mentioned, it gives a summary of how he and his was it maiden or lass or his wife? I forgot how
Yeah,
they
I
refer
forget.
to it. But they have their whole retinue, right? And they're all gussied up and beautiful. And of course, Robin Hood looks like kind of a beggar type figure. And yeah, he's all like about the look of how he looks and he's not looking. He doesn't understand Robin Hood or the suffering of the people. Hasn't been mentioned, I think, in his mouth at all. He hasn't even just mentioned it to like dismiss it or something. Maybe he doesn't even know. He's looking at the letter like, oh, someone's stealing from the rich, the Normans and the rich friars and stuff. And that's all that matters to him or something. But yeah, yeah, Robin Hood sees, he knows what's happening, and the sheriff only thinks about what is being seen when people are looking at him. What, and of course, probably they're secretly tittering at him, because he's this foolish character.
Yeah, that's really good too. Just the focus on appearance, and you see Robin Hood, because if I remember correctly, even in this book, Robin Hood is he starts off as like he's at least a yeoman, if not like a noble. And
Mm,
traditionally, Robin of Locksley, like
mm,
he sort of loses his noble status in some of the other versions of it, at least. But
mm.
you do see him sort of voluntarily going down
Right.
to,
Yeah.
to be the bandit in the woods, to be living in the woods, to be, robbing from the rich, to sort of escape from society and live on the fringes, which again is
Yeah.
very, sort of consciously taking on that trickster role,
Yeah.
in order to sort of enact that energy in his society, and having the ability to see that's required to do so, like you're saying, because if you're only concerned with appearances, there's no way you're going to voluntarily step, outside. Like you were talking about, Jesus earlier. Jesus hung out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes, like same
Right.
kind of a
Yeah.
thing, said voluntarily going down to that lower level and trying to generate something from there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So that focus on appearances, and then the sort of inability to see because you were so focused on being
Yeah.
seen. Like that's really great.
Yeah.
I love that. Um, I thought I had something to say, but I'm blanking at the moment. You got
Yeah, I do. Well, so what you just said, I was thinking of how it's remarkable to me that many of the greatest teachers of history, like they said this about Confucius, I believe Buddha also had like literal criminals or people who had led a life of crime around them. No problem with that at all. It's there. It shows they're speaking to something true and deep in the society because it attracts people from every walk of life.
hmm and it's recognizing that even, or also especially, those who are downtrodden in the society have a lot of things that are not being nurtured, not being cultivated,
Mm,
and that's where, I mean, that's what Trickster's there to do,
mm,
and that's where a lot of the hidden good is found, I think, in things.
mm.
I don't know. I'm definitely not interested in trying to get into the center of town myself. No, thank you. Not that I'm going to go around saving society or anything, I don't think, but the appeal of the margin and the sort of the ease of that area is, much more. It just makes more sense. You can breathe better, you know. So
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
if this is comforting, the end of Plato's Republic, they've gone through this ideal society, this, do you want to be a ruler, a philosopher, king, a tyrant, and they sort of at least explicitly come to a conclusion that it's kind of better to be in the middle, that
Hmm.
for sort of happiness, of sort of virtue and things. I mean, I think practically speaking, one would have, more money, more problems. Like it is kind of, it is maybe in a way hard to sort of to mix things to for a rich man to pass through the eye of a needle,
Right,
so.
right. Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
sorry, harder for a rich man to get into the kingdom of heaven than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. But
I totally knew what you meant. It didn't sound
thank
strange at all.
you.
I was like, yeah. Rich man, eye of the needle. Awesome. I got you.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice. That's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
I, I did have like a thought about this whole picture we're painting of Sherwood Forest and what's the town's name? Sherwood Town is something
Nottingham.
Nottingham Town, right? And this
Yeah.
whole microcosm, right? Of, it's sort of like Plato's Republic, where are we talking about society, or are we talking about one human mind? And I was thinking in terms of the human mind, like what we were saying about the sheriff is the explicit authority who's always thinking about how he is seen rather than trying to see, trying to understand. And Robin Hood, the sort of more legitimate, or I shouldn't say that, a real kind of leader is not worried about how he's seen. He will take on different disguises and things. He will do kind of what's necessary, and he knows what is necessary because he is seeing. He's talking to people. He understands what is actually happening versus trying to sort of impose it in this rigid way. I was just thinking of sort of Ian McGilchrist kind of idea of the left brain and the right brain, the sort of the Sheriff of Nottingham is sort of like, uh, I correct me if I'm getting the right and the left hemispheres confused, but either way, he's the hemisphere. I think the right hemisphere, the Sheriff of Nottingham is
Oh,
sort
no,
of.
I think you got that backwards.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah.
So he's the left hemisphere, which is sort of more concerned with differentiation, right? Labels, uh, categories, and things like that. Whereas Robin Hood, residing, of course, in the forest, which is sort of also maybe like the unconscious, is sort of seeing the whole picture and sensing, understanding the things that are being ignored by the explicit categories.
Yeah. Spot on. I mean, I think that's part of, if you look into like a lot of mythology in the world, it's like, oh, the thing you're missing is on the fringes. It's on, it's outside society, or it's the jewels in the buried under your house, or it's in the dung heap, or whatever it is. It's
Right.
kind of a common theme. And I think that points to exactly what you're talking about, of like, when you're stuck with left brain dominance and you're only seeing categories and concepts and chopped out parts of a thing, and you're not seeing the whole system, um, then you're focused on, well, when I am labeled as rich, when I am labeled
Yeah.
as powerful, then I will have wholeness, then I will feel good. And you've taken this one small part, and you've seen that, and you see, and then you were talking about the sheriff focusing on his appearance, how he is seen. I think it's the same thing, how he's labeled. And then Robin Hood being like, he's able to see the whole picture, which is very right brain, and he's kind of holding everything together until the proper ruler comes back and kind of holds the balance between the two. If we're looking at it through that brain model, so the ability, the right brain has to hold the parts of the system that are not cared for by the left brain's over focus on small details.
Right.
The right brain has to hold the whole thing together until balance is returned, which is what would be, King Richard coming back from the Crusades. Like the
Right.
rightful leader is back again to restore order the way it's meant to be, instead of the overly focused domain of the purely left hemisphere. Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that at all. But the pattern's there for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of,
Anything
well,
you're thinking about with the second story about the shooting match? I thought there's a lot of nice descriptions of, yeah, of the whole area, the people there. Yeah, anything else you wanted to add about that?
I was quite amused that Robin Hood showed up in Scarlet. I thought that was like, it's because red and green are opposite colors, right? So
Oh,
like,
right. Yeah.
it's like he's showing up as like, I'm as not green as I can be, guys. So it's this like trickster play of the opposites, of like, well, red is green and green is red. So here I am showing up in my green, but it's red, and you don't understand because you're not
Right.
smart enough to see the relationship there. And it just felt like such a archetypal trickster energy moment, of like showing up in the exact different color as a
Yeah.
costume, when
Yeah.
like he's still all in one color, and it's still all like Yeah, it's just it's he's pointing to green by being as not green as he can be.
That's
And
funny. Yeah,
I thought that was cool.
for someone with a more subtle mind, they might pick up on that. He's testing you.
Exactly. 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 Sort of look, I can announce myself and you won't even notice.
Does it say
Um
that?
no, but
Oh,
that's the
oh.
vibe. That's the vibe. That's the vibe.
Okay, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just checking my notes to see if there was anything else. Um
Yeah, he doesn't want to completely hide. I mean, we can talk about his pride too. I think he does have pride there and
yeah, in fact that was kind of the end of my notes for that particular chapter. Was so Robin Hood's there and the sheriff comes up and is like doesn't recognize him as Robin Hood consciously. And he's
Mhm.
like, "Oh, well, tattered stranger, you have won. Congratulations. You're the best archer in the land and you're clearly better than that coward Robin Hood, who didn't even bother showing up today." Um, which it doesn't say that the sheriff is doing this on purpose, but if the sheriff did suspect that this guy might be Robin Hood, he could be trying to get a rise out of him.
Yeah.
Oh, this will piss him off.
Yeah.
And instead, Robin Hood does something in that moment to make the sheriff angry. And so then the sheriff is overcome by his emotions and
Right.
loses any kind of suspicion he might have of Robin Hood. So he sort
Yeah.
of redirects that back by being like, "No, I don't want to work for you. I don't work for any man. Like,
Yeah.
screw you. Why would I want to work for you, sheriff?" And the sheriff, "How dare you not want to work for me? I'm the sheriff." Right. So that sort of deflects the sheriff at that point. But then if you're just following along in the story, like the way the story is written, um, we have the sheriff back at home feasting with his men, and Robin Hood is in the forest, and Robin Hood has this moment of pride of like, I can't let that go. I can't let that go. And Little John's like, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it for you." So Robin Hood kind of gives into his pride, his sort of inability to just sit with the situation, his need to prove himself.
Mhm.
And immediately after that, we have the sheriff being like, "Huh, now that guy in the tattered clothes, there was something about him." So you see the idea in the sheriff's mind start coming back up into consciousness of, oh, maybe that was Robin Hood.
Mm.
And it's almost like Robin Hood, like if you're if you look at it as like as wizards or like magic or something, like sheriff's trying to wrap these words around Robin Hood to get him to confess, like, "Oh, Robin Hood's such a coward. You're clearly better than him. And
Mm.
if you're Robin Hood, you're going to get mad at me, right?" And
Mm.
then Robin Hood like turns the spell around and puts it on the sheriff and has the sheriff behave in the way that Robin Hood wants him to behave. So you're not going to overpower me my emotions. I'm going to overpower you with your emotions. But
Mm.
then later, Robin Hood's sort of grip on that position slips, and he's like, "No, now I am getting overpowered by those emotions later." And as he gives up his control, then the sheriff's information, the knowledge that the sheriff has, starts to rise up into his consciousness. So the thing that Robin Hood blocked
Mm.
becomes unblocked and starts coming back up, but it doesn't matter anymore because he's gotten away and he wants the sheriff to find out. So he kind of
Mm.
he it doesn't impact him because he was able to kind of control his passions until he got to a point where they weren't going to impact him.
Yeah.
But it was really neat. I really liked seeing that sort of like the clarity rising in the sheriff and then being blocked, and then Robin Hood sort of giving into his pride, and the sheriff sort of having the information come back. I thought that was a nice little like little bit of a loop
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah, it's good structure in the narrative.
Yeah.
And I was think I talked about Robin Hood wanting to sort of like Odysseus when he's escaping the Cyclops, by the way, my name isn't nobody, I'm Odysseus. And then that kind of leads to more pain for Odysseus in Homer's story. And then so I was thinking, was this a misstep on Robin Hood's part? And it might turn out to be one. That would be an interesting sort of story arc of later on. The note is the thing. Like with Pablo Escobar, he had his picture taken, and I think later on that kind of helped lead to his arrest. Sorry, he had his mugshot taken by the police in a moment of pride, and that later helped to like solidify the case against him because he's like Al Capone, like really hard to catch, and they have to catch him on, something else. It's really hard. But um, But with Robin Hood, like I wondered if you thought this was a misstep because, as you pointed out, his jousting with the sheriff is emotional, just like how he beat the tinker, right? By getting a rise out of the tinker and everything. And and we might also say knowing the vulnerabilities, like the sheriff is very vain and insecure. And when the sheriff starts to figure it out, maybe when in the end of this story, when he's with his men, maybe the idea would be that he could start to formulate a plan. He's reflecting, right? So this is the moment in a story when a character can develop knowledge when they're not in the interplay of emotions and society and everything. Later they're by themselves and they can process things. But then that's when Little John and the other merry man send like the arrow through their dining hall, uh, and kind of identifying, yeah, Robin Hood got the better of you. Now heaven bless thy grace this day. And there is sort of like a irreverent kind of religiosity to a lot of these stories, and that's very enjoyable. And now heaven bless thy grace this day. Say all in sweet Sherwood, for thou didst give the prize away to merry Robin Hood. And I don't know, I wonder if you think this too. I wonder if maybe this is like a a good move on Robin Hood's part, where the sheriff is starting to get a little power through his knowledge, and then like you can imagine this arrow coming through into their dining hall and sort of showing their vulnerability and everything. Uh, and maybe he would like pound his fist on the table, that varlet, no good, whatever medieval word, good, colorful medieval words they have.
Right,
I
right.
don't know
Yeah.
what you think of that.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's definitely Robin Hood playing his hand. Like he's like, yeah, he's admitting, he's telling
Mm,
the sheriff how I got the best of you, which is definitely uh it's a thing he could have kept.
mm,
He could have kept secret. Maybe he could have, let word get out through the people,
mm.
whispers campaign, like, oh, everybody hears, oh, did you hear that was actually Robin Hood? Oh my God, oh my God. But nobody knows for sure. The sheriff might dismiss the rumors. Like, so there is some level of like he's showing his cards he doesn't have to show. But I think if you look at the pattern of behavior especially in these three stories, the sheriff isn't going to like revealing that Robin Hood won the arrow didn't cause the sheriff to then want to hunt him down. Like he was going to do it anyway. So
Yeah,
the events were already in motion. So Robin Hood didn't necessarily lose something. Like he didn't start a problem that wasn't already there.
yeah,
So it's kind of okay, but I do think it in the very least humanizes Robin Hood a little bit, and that
mm,
he's not perfectly immune to his pride. He does have moments of pride. He does give in to them.
yeah.
He
That's a
does
very
have
good
this
point.
weakness, so I do think it was less than an ideal play on his part, but it doesn't seem to have injured his his activity in the story so far. And like I said, it does humanize him. So
Mm.
yeah.
I think that's a very good point. I also thought on a sort of more meta level, I wonder if these stories are like they are stories directed to the audience to sort of give, again, like we keep talking about this portrait of what happens when the legitimate leadership is absent. And this is the kind of thing you can do to an illegitimate leader to shame them. But if you did this kind of thing to a legitimate leader, I would think that they would have to crush you after that, or else there would be too much murmurings, too much stirrings, and kind of a rebellious nature would kind of could arise among the people.
It would depend, I think, because if you have a legitimate ruler who's actually taking care of the people, there wouldn't necessarily be any strong desire for rebellion. They might the ruler might look bad. Oh, they got taken advantage of by this bandit. It might weaken the power a little bit. It would depend on how the authority had legitimate authority. I could see if the sheriff was a good man, he might laugh. Oh, they got the best of me. Oh man, they really got me that time. I didn't see that was him at all. I had no idea.
Mm,
Just
yeah.
sort of laugh it off.
Mm,
But the ability to do that and continue to be a good leader and continue to be a leader would be that the people are on your side anyway because you're a good leader. And so, yeah, the bandit took advantage of you. This is an interesting bandit. His social stock is going to raise because he, tricked the king and pulled off the heist. We all love a good heist movie. We want to cheer for the anti-heroes,
mm,
but it wouldn't necessarily weaken a legitimate ruler, assuming the legitimate ruler was legitimate, did have authority vested by the people because the people really did want to support him, and he wasn't. If his power wasn't threatened by this, then I think it might be okay. But that is a pretty idealistic character. I'm not sure I would believe him in a story if he was completely unthreatened. It would be very one-dimensional. Like he doesn't feel very human to be
yeah.
that perfect of a role.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd also think there's some differences in maybe the way we're envisioning the state. And I do think most of the time in in most circumstances, if you can kind of say that, what you're saying would be true. But I do think there is the possibility of sort of a demagogue or sort of a rebellious or even malicious side to some people, and enough people in the wrong circumstances where even if you had a legitimate good leader, that kind of dark spirit could arise. Because sometimes there could be a famine that's just, you just have to get through it. This was nobody's fault. This wasn't the fault of the ruler, or some kind of terrible war from abroad or something like that. I think there's some instances where you would have that kind of rebellious spirit, and then someone like a dark Robin Hood could come and if we were looking at this story in that type of situation, then what I said could be true of, like, you might need to crush him or something like that if he was making a fool of you. um, but yeah, that's kind of, I kind of think, this is maybe even related to the conversation we were having before the podcast of sometimes I think of like the niche cases of like the psychopath or of the et cetera. That sort of, I think that this comes through in our conversations sometimes too, where sometimes I think there's a little more emphasis on my part of like the dark human nature where for no reason, not, it's not even necessarily in their best interest, maybe like Iago and Othello, where they're just looking to like stir things up or to take someone down. I think there's sometimes just a maliciousness in people that can kind of come out.
Yeah, I definitely like I don't disagree with that, but I do feel you emphasize it more clearly than I do. Like I'm not at odds with what you're saying, but I don't talk about it that much. I'm not sure. I'm
Mm,
not sure why that is. Um, I have sort of a belief, or not a belief. I want to hold the perspective
mm,
of like even those people have something genuine in them, and if I label them as dark,
yeah.
then I don't see the what might be good, and I can't speak to that good in them and try and either encourage it. Or one thing that will happen, I think, is if you speak to the good in people and they don't want to admit that to themselves, they will often either attack you or run away from you, but then you
Mm,
know who they are. Like
mm,
there's a way that they sort of side with their darker nature, and you're like, okay, you're choosing to do that.
mm,
Like I don't need to associate with you anymore.
mm,
Um, which is good in theory, but hard to do in practice because if you piss them off, they might come after you, or they might, so there is all of
Yeah.
that. And there's being able to see the good in people, but also see the bad is, I think, a hard thing to do. And I
Yeah.
tend to
Yeah.
I tend to fall on I just focus on the good,
Yeah.
possibly to my detriment. I don't know. I don't know.
I think that's a very good part of the discussion. I think I also, yeah, like you said, we have slightly different sort of some worldview or something like that. Just there's a not quite complete overlap, but I do think and I try to, and I want to focus on the good and the including the sort of how the people that the darker parts are are coming out or sort of obviously present, and how through something like education, something like enlightenment, you can, not like the Buddhist enlightenment, but just more just like proper information, uh uh like good debate, not debate, but good discussion, where you're sort of, you're trying to talk to the whole person, including the good part, even if the good part's sort of only 15% or something like that. But yeah, I do politically, I think politically in the broad sense, not like narrowly the party or policies or something like that that you adhere to, but more like just human beings as a group. Sometimes, yeah, you do have to keep in mind that in any system we have, there's always the fly in the ointment or the speck or something like that. And yes, usually you have to focus on I think this was a Facebook post of William Apple's that you like uh, uh, upvoted, and I saw recently. Or no, that was a quote of his, the quote from the Bible anyway, that
Hmm.
that he sort of had in his email. Anyway, the yeah, you most of the time you do have to focus on the plank in your own eye, not the sort of chip in their eye or whatever, however it
Yeah.
goes. But
Yeah.
but I do kind of politically, I do try to keep in mind that sometimes, yeah, people do choose the dark path, or maybe some people they just, there's like, I don't know, in the quantum possibilities, only like 5 times out of 10 trillion do they that's probably an exaggeration, but only in some instances will they really choose the good. Most of the time, for some reason, the baby Hitler is always going to become the genocidal Hitler or something like that. So
Mm. No, I don't know. I think I sort of I've been sitting with my perspective and like where it comes from and how I balance between the two. And I think I come at it from a perspective of, like you're saying, like if I can remove the thing from my own eye,
yeah,
and the thing that I talk about and the way I be in the world and the sort of vibe that I cultivate around myself is like,
mm,
hey, we're all here to do the best we can to get the thing out of our eye, to clear.
yeah,
If you want to mix your metaphors, like there's some sort of a flow of goodness that can happen.
yeah,
We can connect with something good and we can sort of channel it into our lives, through morality, through good thoughts, through positive emotions, through facing our own demons, through being able to sit with our negative emotions. Like there's a bunch of ways to do that, but I believe there is a positive current in the world that I can align myself with. And the thing you're talking about, the beam in the eye, is the thing that blocks me from seeing that.
yeah,
So if I work to be aligned with that good force as best as I can and let that force work through me in the world as best as I can, which I'm not very good at, but that's the intention,
yeah,
that then my hope is that the people who choose the darker parts, um, they don't want to be around somebody who's trying to do good things. Like it doesn't it like I would welcome them with the interest of, well, talk to me about your darkness, talk to me about the beam in your eye, talk to me like what are you
yeah,
working on? What's going on for you? Let's try and help you out. Most people who choose the darker path don't want that, and so they leave. or they stick around because part of them wants that, and then it's like, okay, cool, how can I help that part of them? But if they're genuinely going to continue to choose a darker path, then I don't know. But then, you have Socrates, you have Jesus. Like, these are people
Yeah.
who did what I'm talking about way better than anything I could ever pull off in my life. They got killed for it. So it's
Yeah.
not I don't think you ever like get rid of the darkness. And I don't know if they were trying to do that, but that's the lesson I take from them is like, I have no interest in should I achieve any level of skill and talent at this thing that I'm talking about, this generating of a good flow. I'm not trying to get rid of the darkness in the world. I don't think I can. I have an opinion that I don't quite understand, but there's something like I can't explain, but I think there's something about darkness and suffering and being able to take that road that is necessary. I don't think we get rid of
Mm,
that from the human
mm,
experience. I don't think we should
mm,
try to get rid of that from the human experience.
mm,
But I think it's up to everyone to make a choice in how they're going to try and enact their life, what they're going to try and do while they're alive. And so, like, that's always going to be there. I'm not going to get rid of it. I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to shine as bright as I can, um, get the stuff out of my own eyes as best as I can, see the world as clear as I can, see what is asked of me and enact it as best as I can in the hopes that it does something like Robin Hood. It nourishes the system. There's
mm,
still going to be corrupt people. There's still going to be poor people. There's still going to be suffering. But the whole thing as a whole will be like the structure will raise. So they'll still
mm.
be like,
Yeah.
all the way down the center to the lower, but the whole thing will raise and then people will have an easier time. They might not even recognize it. They might not even know it, but it'll just be smoother. Um, that's kind of my attitude. So my thought when it comes to like, a dark Robin Hood or something is like, well, if I was in the situation where I was the legitimate ruler and there was a famine on the land and the people were struggling and I knew there was already this rebellious spirit in the population and I was trying the best I could, and then this guy came and took advantage of me, like what would I do? Like in that moment, I think I would want to go and meet with him
Mm,
and see what kind of a man he was if I didn't know already.
mm, good
And
point. Yeah.
see, does he have a legitimate grievance that I can resolve? Is there some project of his that needs support that isn't, I guess that's still a legitimate grievance, but like, is
Mm,
there a way I can support him and show him that, hey, you're a part of a functioning society. We're trying to function as a whole. Like, help me function this society better, if
mm,
I can use it as a verb.
mm,
Um, and then in that moment, seeing what his response is, and if he chooses, oh no, I do want things to be better, then it's like, great, come on board. Let's see what we can do. You have this is what Robin Hood does, right? He wins over Little John. He wins over the
yeah.
Crabstaff guy. Like he gets these people that are sort of in the in-between part. He gets them on his team
Yeah.
because he cares about them.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you go and you meet, as a legitimate ruler, you go and you meet this dark Robin Hood, and he's just like, fuck you, man. I don't want to deal with
Yeah.
you. Then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, you have people that choose. The thing about the dark path is it devolves, it falls apart. So
Mm,
with enough time, it will fall apart if you don't do something to reinforce it. And that's the razor line that I think the legitimate leader has to walk in the face of some sort of dark opposition is
mm,
like, how do I let it destroy itself
mm.
while still maintaining the good that I'm trying to maintain?
Yeah.
And that it will do on its own if you manage it, but I don't know that you always can. Sometimes things just have to dissolve. Maybe it's time to step down as a leader. Maybe it's time for your society to collapse down and be reborn later as something else. Like who can
Yeah.
say for sure? But I can say all of that. And then I look at human history and I look at like the plight of most of the world, as it's been colonized, as it's been subjugated, as it's been stripped of its resources. And it's a very scary thing to say the dark parts of human nature that are causing so much struggle and strife in the world, we just have to kind of wait them out. Like, I, I don't think that's the answer. And that's something I struggle with right now is like, what is the right action to take? How do you stand against evil without strengthening evil by standing against it? Is that possible, or becoming it? Like we've talked previously about the communists and Stalin and sort of replacing the corrupt the
Czar.
rulership, the czar, yes, thank you, the nobility, with the common man, but then the common man is just as corrupt and the whole system just gets worse. Like you
Yeah.
don't want that to happen, but you also don't want to just let the corruption carry on. The czar, the whatever problems they were having, like you don't want to let that carry on. So how to generate a renewal of society is something I think we are all faced with right now as a planet, let alone as a country, let
Mm.
alone like, you know, as a Western civilization versus whatever isn't Western civilization.
Hmm.
But there's a call for a rebirth of something, or I think we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So, but I don't have an answer to that. And so the path that I'm on is one of trying to clear my vision more and more until I can see maybe something I can do to contribute to a rebirth. Or I don't even know. I don't even know. I assume it will, if anything comes, it will be sort of a from a higher place down into the world. It won't be necessarily something that we just think of ourselves and enact. I think that was
Yeah.
the failing of communism, was they thought they could do it without some sort of a higher power, and therefore there's no higher power, there's a power vacuum. What rises into the power vacuum? Corruption. Because
Yeah.
there's no spirit of the law, like we were talking about
Yeah.
at the beginning of this podcast. So
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that was very good, kind of encompassing kind of history and leadership and things. I would say what you said about communism, the idea that we can, yeah, we have the answer to this is what history is, and this is the system to correct it. You could say that also in general, kind of about enlightenment, where it's kind of like technical knowledge of how the world works. And then in, with technologies and various things, I mean, there have been a lot of triumphs, of course, with, food production and everything. But yeah, this idea that you're not appealing to anything higher except for like the laws of physics and things. Yet it seems like you're gonna kind of just go wrong morally. You do have to have something higher than sort of just trying to address needs or and trying to palliate the sort of greediness of people and things, not really trying to rein it into enough, or at least give him a better vision. Um, yeah.
yeah,
I like your answer though. Your answer is to me essentially practical. Like I am one individual. Theoretically, if I could divinely encompass all of enough of reality to as if from on high give you the answer in words, I mean, it wouldn't make a difference. It wouldn't really make a difference. And in fact, that is what Marxism, or that is what any utopian ideal is trying to do. I know reality. I know what needs to be done. Doesn't matter if we need to kill 10 or 100 million people or whatever, uh, because we're going to have heaven on earth after that. Yeah, and I think yeah, just I am one person, and if I can clear my vision enough, and sort of spread, be an example of and kind of spread kind of kindness, love, knowledge, and things, that's kind of all that I can do in the like 70 to 80 years that I'm gonna be active on this world. Like, let's not get delusions of grandeur here, where I think I can have perfect knowledge and then reorder everything according to that.
yeah, yeah. And I think for at least speaking for myself, the desire for perfect knowledge and the desire to reorder everything, um, for me, it comes from sort of a mix. There's like two different canisters. Like one is the sort of disastrous situation that we're in, and the understanding of like, yeah, like we need something. You know, it's the way things are going doesn't seem very hopeful, um, as a whole. Like it seems things are falling apart, and if that needs to happen, then what do we do to prepare for that? Um, but then there's also, so it's like big problems need big solutions, but can I provide a big solution? I want to solve the whole problem, but I don't know that I can. And then there's also the, ooh, I want to solve the whole problem, you
Yeah.
know, that ego level.
Yeah.
Um, but I think we do need big solutions. And I think the best way to kind of bridge the gap between the two is like you're saying, like I'm one person, I do a little bit of good, I shed light where I can. Um, if something is going, if the big solution is going to come, it's going to come from people doing exactly what you're talking about. And it will be something that is a like a crystallization or a co-arising from everybody's working together, that that greater thing that we need to keep our egos from taking over will manifest itself with enough people calling out for it, with enough people doing the work, shining, trying to be a moral person, trying to genuinely clear their own eyes. And I think that that's the way to solve any of the problems we have right now, is to try and be as good of a person as we can in our lives, and then hopefully that will impact other people. Um, I think of it, maybe alchemically, maybe scientifically, if you have a beaker of water and you put salt in it, like the salt dissolves and the salt dissolves and the salt dissolves, but if you have enough salt, eventually it'll just start crystallizing out of the
Hmm.
water because it reaches the saturation point.
Hmm.
And that happens suddenly. And up until that point, you don't see anything. It looks like nothing's happening.
Oh,
But
really? Oh, wow.
if you have enough, it'll just sort of crystallize out. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the metaphor I take for like what I'm trying to do. And if it doesn't work, at least I lived my life well. At least I followed my values and I tried to live a noble, respectable life. And I think, in the very least, I hope I will die with less regrets that way.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. This sort of, like being a doctor, do no harm sort of thing. I mean, hopefully you can help a lot, but at least don't hurt. And yeah, that
Yeah,
seems like a good intention.
yeah, yeah.
I think also what you said about like the scenario I gave where there's let's say there's a good ruler, but there's some kind of thing outside of their control, kind of making life really hard. And then you have some sort of dark Robin Hood that seems to be stirring up the rebellious spirit. I think, yeah, your answer was good in that I need more information. Am I really the good ruler? Is this guy like some kind of malicious character, or is he like a necessary trickster, or etc.? Let's get more information. And in that journey to talk with the Robin Hood, already you're changing things, and you're showing virtue, you're showing courage, you're showing openness, you're showing curiosity. And then, yeah, you can talk to the Robin Hood, and politically being seen doing that, you can also be showing, yeah, all those virtues I just mentioned, and that you're trying to get more information. And yeah, you will maybe, if he's just a totally malicious character, you might take some steam out of his engine, wind out of his sails, whatever metaphor we want to use. And then you can kind of go on. Yeah, you need more information
Yeah,
first.
yeah, and you would have to he would have to be seen in that light for the wind to be taken out of his sails. So it would
Right. Yeah.
there you get into like politics and media
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And you
the
do have to be
narrative and all of
smart.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And yeah, like Robin Hood with his willing to not pay off the proprietor of the Blue Boar Inn, but yeah, being practical and sort of, no, don't, don't think that you can be a leader even of your own life and completely ignore appearances, other people's psychology and things like that. You do have to kind of cater to that a little bit, probably. And the higher you go, the more you'll have to cater to that. And hopefully you just don't lose your soul in the process.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Trying to maintain that original inspiration or spark of virtue while out in the world, and not have it be taken or blown out by it. It's definitely uh, you see that happen a lot. You know,
And I think with the picture you painted also of the sort of, you do have to be open to maybe your society is going to collapse. You know, the it's debatable whether the highest thing is to keep the political order going. I mean, all societies do kind of fall eventually, and maybe, yeah, your society is failing because it's senile and it's time for it to die, something like that. Maybe you do have to lose your life in that in sort of gracefully transitioning to its death or something rather than, paroxysms of sort of, like not accepting it.
Yeah, yeah. Oof.
So for the third story, do you
Yeah.
still have energy to discuss that?
Oh, I do. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's been a wide-ranging conversation. I'm just
Yeah.
chuckling about it. Um, Third story. I didn't actually have much to say about that because it
Mm,
was um I mean it seemed to be what it was. You know, it's the sheriff sort of like we already said, but the sheriff finally, doing his authority in an authoritative way,
mm,
doing the thing he's sort of hired to do. He's supposed to keep the men at arms and he's supposed to keep the peace, and
mm,
ostensibly that's what he should be doing.
mm,
And he hasn't been. So he finally kind of steps up to that, but he fails.
mm.
And we almost lose Will Stutley, but we don't, and he's rescued, and um, it's enough to send this sheriff off. He's done. It finishes him. No, he doesn't have anything after that.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good sort of conclusion to sort of how the sheriff is trying various ways to sort of get rid of the thorn in his side, showing different tactics, none of them working.
Yeah, yeah,
You had mentioned just a little scene of that as I had also thought was poignant when I guess he's coming out of the Will Stutely is being escorted out of the town towards the place where he will be hanged, and it's like a crossroads. And he looks out at the verdant fields, and it's sort of this beautiful kind of scene. And this is like practically the last moment of his life, his consciousness. And I thought that was, a poignant kind of scene.
yeah. I thought it really it both did a lovely job portraying, the English countryside. Like I was like, oh, I could picture it. It's so lovely and refreshing. And then also like on an emotional side, like you were saying, it's very clearly the last moment of this guy's life, and he's just the beauty and the appreciation of life in general, the way everything gets sharper and sweeter when we think we're gonna die.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't know what to really talk about. I mean, one thing is though that it seems like things are getting a little more serious in terms of there's going to be a death, and it doesn't happen, but yeah, maybe a little away from the sort of slightly maybe comic book kind of feeling of like these Robin Hood stories, the very light touch that they had. It gets more serious here.
Yeah, for sure. It does. The stakes get higher. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought yeah, and it's interesting that Little John is kind of the one that shows up the most in the battle with the guards of the sheriffs. Um, but I don't know what to make of that. Just it's maybe just another portrait of just how brave and competent in fighting Little John is, to sort of, yeah, be at the
Yeah.
forefront.
It is kind of interesting. Robin Hood hardly, I mean, he's described as being there, but we don't really hear anything about him during the battle at all, which
Mm,
he's the hero of a heroic story. Like,
yeah,
how do we not see him? And it is Little John. And that is interesting. I wonder, you mentioned something about Little John, working for the sheriff or something, and I saw a couple of chapter headings seem to focus on him. So I'm curious, going forward, if there's like what comes of it, but can't speak to that yet.
yeah, yeah. That might be part of just, yeah, a refocusing on Little John a little bit as the story arc goes on. I thought of also though Robin Hood not being at the head of the battle. It's sort of like, to me, maybe I just see everything through this light, but he is maybe like a little bit of a leader. Like, I would think in even in martial settings, the leader would want to be a little bit careful risking themselves because they're so sort of important to the welfare of the group and the society for Robin Hood.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. It may have been just something that was expected, um, by even just the writer, or by within the story itself, by the characters, of like, yeah, of course he's not going to be on the front lines. He's the leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, very good, wide-ranging discussion. Did you want to bring anything else up about this story, Robin Hood, and legitimacy of leadership?
I don't think so. I think I guess one thing, it was interesting to see the king kind of pop up, as just the king. I always expect the Robin Hood stories to be, I mean, we've been talking about them as if the legitimate ruler is missing and whatever. And here the king's presented as the king, and he seems very kingly, and his wife is described as lovely or beautiful, or so they're sort of lauded in this way.
Mm,
And he just seems like he doesn't want to be involved, which is kind of a step, kind of a bad thing for a leader to be. But then also I think he's in his rights to say, no, you're supposed to be handling this. This is your
yeah,
area of authority. I'm not, I'm, you're doing that for me. So I'm not going to come in and, like,
yeah,
so he seems to kind of do the right thing there. So it is kind of interesting to see the king of the land not portrayed in an ill light, despite the fact that we're still waiting for, Richard the Lionheart to come back and kind of set everything right. Um, be interesting to see how that plays out as we go through, because I've not read the Howard Pyle version before. This is my first time sort of wading into his version of it.
mm.
I've I've got Walt Disney and Kevin Costner and Mel Brooks running through my mind most of the time.
What's the Mel Brooks? Is that the Prince? Wait, what
It's
is it?
the Men in Tights,
I
Robin Hood
saw
Men in
that. That
Tights.
was really good.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Robin
yeah,
Hood Men in Tights. Got if you
yeah.
haven't seen it, you've got to see that. I mean,
Definitely, definitely. Yep. Yeah,
what?
Men in Tights. Prince of Thieves is the one with Kevin Costner. That was just classic hero story. I think he's coming back from the Crusades himself in that one, and
Yeah.
he's lost his home. Um,
Isn't
so
that
he,
one kind of disliked? I mean, is was that a good version?
I don't remember. It's I was
Okay.
I was young enough that it was like, oh, it's fun. It's a Robin Hood movie.
Yeah.
I had the video game on the Nintendo system as a kid. I remember that. It was a pretty fun game, despite being, a franchise. Usually the franchise games are pretty bad.
Oh, really?
Um,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. But anyway, um, yeah, I just wanted to point that out about the king, that I was sort of surprised to see. It wasn't painted as an entirely bad wasteland. It's just sort of within Nottingham and within Sherwood that sort of seems to have fallen apart. The social order seems to have fallen apart.
yeah, right. Yeah, he goes into London town and it's not obviously like a Babylon. It's not this decadent, villainous king or anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Maybe more on that later or something like that.
yeah,
Maybe there's some more subtle things, but yeah, just delegating power to this guy who obviously has power, with all the men he has at his disposal, well equipped. I mean, yeah, that would be something that a normal ruler would do.
yeah, yeah. And I think sheriff is technically a low level, um nobility. I think it was, like kings, and then like princes and dukes and counts, and then like sheriffs, like way down at the bottom. So he's sort of just this low level, middle management kind of guy, which he very much acts very middle management.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he was not someone who rose through competency or something through the ranks of the company, if we're using that kind of
Yeah,
analogy.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so yeah, we'll maybe next time we'll maybe go to like we're talking about maybe going back to maybe a folk tale like either Grimm's Brothers or Von Schoenworth, and then maybe returning to Robin Hood after that and kind of continuing on through the Howard Pyle version until we kind of get to the end. And
yeah. Mix it up a little bit. I think if we go all Robin Hood all the time, I might get a little bored of it. So,
yeah,
and
that
they might as well.
yeah, yeah, sounds
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon, Ian.
Sounds good.